Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm David Lindsay, and this is Leandra Lasser. We've co-curated the series. We're really excited for tonight. I'm going to introduce our series kind of generally, and then Leandra is going to introduce Wendy and Ksenia. I guess first things first, thank you to Segue and thank you to Artist Space for hosting us. This has been like dream come true after dream come true after dream come true. Yeah, so generally about our series, we've aimed to select a group of non-disciplinary, hyper-contemporary writers, artists, and performers that move between an awe of the extraordinary, ethnobotanical literary studies, anti-language, gardening not architecture, of weather, of infinities, of queerness, of blackness, and all the heat that is generated in those and many other in-betweens. Our program brings together a group of diverse and interdisciplinary readers within the poetry, visual arts, and generally New York scene. With that, I'll hand things off to Leandra.
All right. Hello, everyone. So really excited for tonight. Dave and I always talk about like how we've just been dreaming of this series, and every single Saturday is always extremely special, especially to see like all the folks that come in here to support the two amazing and beautiful readers that are up for the night. I'm really excited because these two are two people I can just say are really close friends of mine, and also two people I look up to. And it's hard to think about like saying words about folks who work with words. I don't think I can do it justice. And also folks who critique, so don't critique me, y'all. But just really grateful to have this space tonight. I see a lot of beautiful art folks here. Obviously, queer community came out. Hello, hello. So our first reader is actually someone I adore, someone who has recently become really close to me, and I'm so grateful for it. The first time we met was actually via Instagram, and then we finally met on a rooftop in Bushwick. Bushwick. And we were both reading that night, and it was really, really special. Or actually, sorry, I'm going to take that back. That's not the first time we met, but the first time that we actually, I felt like had this beautiful connection via words. Ksenia was someone after that. We then hung out at Mr. Frog's right up the block. And I remember that night we talked about queer heartbreak, and it was a conversation I still hold dear to me. Just, you know, feeling seen by someone you just met, being able to like speak freely, and just to like laugh and just like have this engagement that I think is so necessary when you think about like how you cultivate relationships, but also just how you like sustain friendships with folks. I can say I know everyone in this room who knows this beautiful human can agree with me that the beautiful thing about them as a person, I won't speak about their work because, you know, I'm not going to do that. You all know how amazing these two are. But the one thing I can say about Ksenia as a person is that they always show up for you. And when they do show up, it's not just a showing up, it's like a fully present showing up, in a way that they kind of enter the space with you, whether it's a show that you're having, whether it's a talk that you're having, whether they are facilitating a talk with you, the way that they show up with you in all of those spaces, even if it's just going to a bar on a Wednesday night just to talk about queer heartbreak, I feel like that's something really special. So I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for your voice in the world, obviously. I'm so grateful that you're here tonight with us. And also, I'm grateful for everyone that's here in this room tonight. Obviously, Mother's Day weekend. So we're in for a special treat, especially with this first reading by Ksenia. Thank you.
That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much, Lei. And I'll just say for now that likewise. So I will be reading an essay that I've been working on about my great-grandmother. And I thought that it would be fitting for Mother's Day. And it is the first time that I'm ever reading it out loud, let alone in public. So thank you all for being here. Can you see the photograph, or should we dim the lights a little bit? Yeah, can we dim the lights? Because the photo is really important. Sorry. Better, yeah? Okay, good. Better for me too. It begins with a photograph. I find it in my yearly holiday ritual of going through the archival accumulation my mother keeps in an old briefcase. Most of the photographs I've seen a million times, yet every year they bring up different memories. I could have sworn this photograph wasn't there the previous year. My mother confirms. The image shows a small group of women in uniform. It was taken in Moscow, 1942. The woman lying in the grass on the right, a leather belt wrapped around her waist, another leather strap around her shoulder, is my great-grandmother Raya. Her real name was Rashida, but she changed it to sound more Russian, less Tatar, less of an ethnic minority. I knew her as Babushka Raya. This is the woman I lived with for the majority of my first 8 years of life. My great-aunt Galia, her youngest daughter, was my primary caretaker. We all shared a small one-bedroom apartment in Arkhangelsk, a once prosperous seaport on the northern Dwina River by the White Sea. A city known for its wooden architecture, children of the endless forest taiga, and white nights when the sun and the moon share custody of light. Our apartment smelled like wet sheep, a pungent odor, quite unappealing to guests, as it was symptomatic of poverty and potentially contagious. My great-grandmother made her own yarn, soaking the wool in our bathtub. Knitting was not only a necessity, but a practice of patience. What is she doing in Moscow in 1942? I always thought she moved straight to Arkhangelsk from Tatarstan. I started asking questions, to the annoyance of my great-aunt Galia and my grandmother Rosa, half-sisters who both claim not to have known anything about their mother's life, particularly her time in Moscow. Неужели тебе это интересно? I like how one word in Russian can hold an entire argument. Неужели? Is it really true? Surely it can't be. Тебе это интересно? That you find this interesting. I insist that it's for work, not for fun, always a successful trick in my family. And slowly, in between their denial of knowledge, they start slipping in critical pieces of information. She was a police officer in the Nurlatsky district in Tatarstan, the republic where the Volga and the Kama rivers meet, home to over 100 ethnic groups. The word Nurala, from which the district's name is derived, means light of Allah, whom my great-grandmother worshipped unconditionally, perfectly satisfied with an abstract idea of God. She had established a reputation in the district for her physical strength, a strength she had gained from taking care of her paralyzed mother. She had a photographic memory. She rode a horse around the villages and one day chased down a thief who had stolen grain from a warehouse. Even though she could identify with hunger, she didn't approve of greed. In 1941, she was recruited to join the Air Defense Department, Protivovozdушная оборона, in Moscow. She didn't speak Russian, which slightly complicated the matter, so she was given a position that didn't require much use of language. I struggled to understand at first what exactly this position entailed. My relatives keep saying she was a zinitchitsa, and I don't know this word. I ask again, what was her task? What exactly? was she asked to do? To watch the sky, Galia and Rosa yell out in unison. But we don't know anything, they add. To watch the sky. To watch the sky for airplanes, to watch the sky for missiles, to watch the sky standing next to an anti-aircraft gun she is expected to operate in the event of German bombers, to watch the sky for hours every day in any weather, any mood, to watch the sky. I remember my great-grandmother as a harsh, stoic woman, a woman who gave me little affection. I used to be fascinated with the folds of her skin, how loosely her skin was draped over her bones, how I could create wave-like movements, pushing the skin back and forth with my finger. It's only there, between the folds of skin, that I ever felt her warmth. And so I would get a strange satisfaction of burying my finger in her skin, and she would usually allow it for a few moments before cursing me away in her inventive Russian Tatar. Sabaka lar, she would say. Sabaka meaning dog in Russian, and lar being the Tatar suffix you add to turn anything into a curse word. Other times, she would call me tupitsalar, stupid. There's a glaring reason that I'm so drawn to this photograph. It's very likely you already noticed it. My great-grandmother is holding hands with another woman, the full intimacy of their touch hidden in the grass. I have no memory of her ever holding my hand like that. Instead, she would clasp it into her fist the same way she would clasp a bag of potatoes. I developed a preference for my hand being held this way, my fingers squeezed together. When I start living with my mother years later, I kindly request that she hold my hand in this particular manner. Needless to say, I become fixated on this potential sign of queerness. I start projecting the certainty of my own queerness onto the only documented gesture of tenderness I now have of my great-grandmother's life. The sky becomes a space of projection. I picture her watching the sky on a bitter winter morning, leaning one side of her body against the familiar cold metal of the anti-aircraft gun. She finds comfort in the physical memory her body has developed with this once intimidating structure, moving around it instinctively, navigating its presence even in the dark, the way a drunk senses the proximity of their bed. To watch the sky, blush modestly as dawn rises on the horizon, indifferent to the privacy of night. Her eyes slowly become weighed down by daydreams, fantasies sticking to her lashes like crusty pieces of sleep. A hazy line hovers in between two clouds, creating a space of tension. How does it feel to hold something you've held before? A rough texture rubbing against your palm. Should it be yours to keep if you were the one who found it? My grandmother Rosa was born in August 1945. There is a blank space on her birth certificate where her name, nationality, and citizenship of her father are supposed to be listed. In Russian, nationality and citizenship used to be different categories. Nationality referenced ethnicity, citizenship, the legal affiliation with a country. My great-grandmother's nationality is listed as Tatar. Citizenship is left blank. I realized that the blanks on my grandmother's birth certificate outnumber the completed parts. I become conscious of the blankness I am making her revisit for the sake of my projections. Guilt comes in waves. The clouds feel higher today. She reaches her arms up towards the sun, prompting a muscle memory of carrying her mother's weight like Atlas holding up the sky. A subtle burn on her chest, followed by an unexpected awareness of another's body casting a cool shadow. The rain came falling down that afternoon, like the theater curtain at the end of a disappointing play, a certain relief. To watch the sky turn into a sea, to imagine herself plunging into it head first. After the war, my great-grandmother tried to join an older sister, one of her 12 siblings, in Uzbekistan. She found herself sharing the train coupe with 2 Russian doctors who had lost both their children in the war. My grandmother Rosa, only a few months old, rested in her arms. Realizing that her travel companion was unmarried and didn't speak much Russian, the doctors offered to buy her blonde-haired child. Think about how much better this baby's life would be, they said. Her leg is asleep and feels separate from her body. She has been watching the sky for hours. I imagine her tongue dry inside her mouth. I once found myself listening to an audio recording of an artist whose work I had studied meticulously, and I became completely obsessed by the sound of her taking small sips of water, the swallowing sound, sometimes followed by a pregnant sigh. Even though I was listening to this in an entirely different time and place than it was recorded, I somehow felt that the swallowing had been for me, in anticipation of my listening. When I meet this artist many years later, she's drinking water. And despite every drop of atheism in me, I feel that I am in the presence of God. For the same illogical reason that I still call out for God every time I die a little. Earlier in the day, a bird flew by. Lastachka. She took note of it more than the other birds she'd see on a daily basis. An anxious fluttering, throwing itself against the sky as if the firmament were a stained glass window of a godless church, a godless sky. Why is there a myth about the thorn bird that impales itself in order to sing its most beautiful song? Is it the ecstasy of pain verging on pleasure, the ecstasy of pleasure verging on pain? Had she experienced any of this? Have I? In Uzbekistan, my grandmother Rosa suffers from inexplicable allergies. And after a few months of trying to cure her, my great-grandmother decides that it's a sign from Allah to leave. She takes another sister up on an invitation to join her in Arkhangelsk, where the sense of belonging is constantly unsettled by departing ships. Shortly upon her arrival, her sister sets her up with a suitor 10 years her senior, Mingalay. As a young man, he was kicked in the face by a horse, losing an eye in the process. It's very likely that he was drunk when this happened, a malaise all but one of his sons would inherit. His wife, pregnant with their 5th child, was crushed by a truck backing out of a warehouse, leaving Mengele a one-eyed widower with 4 small children. Unable to provide for them, he surrenders the children to an orphanage, only to be retrieved upon his marriage to my great-grandmother. She gives birth to an additional 3, resulting in a household of 10. Rest becomes an afterthought. Replacing one uncertain future with another, she starts working 2 labor-intensive jobs at a sawmill and a warehouse. As a side hustle, she washes soldiers' uniforms in the river. During the winters, an ice fishing hole was made in the frozen Dvina so that laundry could continue. I imagine the freezing water cutting into her skin, tired hands clasping the stiffened fabric like she clasped her child while searching for the words, "You can't have her," "Это мой ребенок." In Russian, many of the adjectives applied to the word soul are commonly used in relation to clothing. Words like torn, worn out, overworn, sometimes not worn enough. I like to think of my soul as a rag, a piece of old cloth still damp from soaking up messy feelings. Every now and then I wring it out and hang it up to dry on a wash line called therapy. Dusk has sneaked up on her like desire. She's lying on her back, watching the fading trails in the sky. They remind her of the creases in freshly washed sheets, freshly stained by two bodies in motion, two freshly stained souls. She imagines what the sky would look like, cracked open, exposed like a lover's body. But this isn't her watching the sky. It's me. The fantasy I have of my great-grandmother's queer desire is continuously interrupted by the reality of her history. I look again at the hands. I look at the friend whose hand she's holding. The woman has her eyes closed, refusing my analysis. What am I doing, putting these projections into words, only to be failed by language? Like when I said that I loved you, and I immediately understood that the disclosure undermined the intensity, because once I actually spoke the words out loud, you couldn't possibly take it seriously. Once I presented the words to you on a silver platter, the words so tangible you could actually shove them into your mouth, you couldn't possibly take it seriously. Once I articulated the words confidently enough over and over again so that the repetition would defeat the sincerity, you couldn't possibly take it seriously. And I don't think you did. The Russian poet Marina Tsvetaeva once wrote in her diary, referring to another woman, "We were not friends because I loved her." When I attach lesbian identity to Tsvetaeva in an Instagram story, I receive an angry message from a Russian to English translator. She tells me that I am erasing Tsvetaeva's bisexuality, as she was romantically involved with several men. I am accused of corrupting history. I apologize for any discomfort caused by me, though her discomfort in turn makes me uncomfortable. I admit to her that I am consciously projecting my lesbian desire onto Tsvetaeva, but I also urge that we have no way of knowing how the poet would have identified today, so why not use a little imagination, and why not consider the possibility that lesbian identity doesn't have to exclude a love of multiple genders? And what does it mean anyway to say we were not friends because I loved her? Isn't love expansive and multi-layered? Isn't it perfectly fine to love a friend? Can friendship be romantic? I wish Tsvetaeva had written, "We were not friends because I couldn't look at her hand without imagining it inside of me." By the time my great-grandmother was 90, she had outlived 5 of her children. Before she passed away in 2011, she communicated one wish to her only remaining son, Ahmet. While the usual Muslim burial would entail her being wrapped in muslin and directly suspended into the earth, my great-grandmother requested to be placed in a coffin because she worried that the earth in the northern city was too wet and the worms would reach her body too quickly. When I learned this snippet of information, the sky above me crumbles. In all my memories, and those relayed to me by others, I never identified fear. After a lifelong commitment to hide all emotion, it was at the end of her life that my great-grandmother finally admitted being afraid of worms. I am forced to acknowledge my projections are just that, projections of my desire to identify with someone who was most likely too overwhelmed by fear to allow herself any desire at all. There is a Russian film set in Stalin's Soviet Union of the late 1930s, Утомленная солнцем, Those Wearied by the Sun. The soundtrack is a tango from 1937, titled Утомленное солнце, The Weary Sun. We would play it only when my great-grandmother wasn't home, as she associated music with a troubled state of mind. Yet one morning, I woke up early, and I could hear the sound of her slippers shuffling in the kitchen. And for a moment, I thought I heard her sing. Моё солнце нежно с морем прощалась. В этот раз ты призналась, что нет любви. Мне немного взгрустнулось, без тоски, без печали. В этот раз прозвучали слова твои. Расстаемся, не станем слиться. Виноваты в этом ты и я. Утомленное солнце нежно с морем прощалось. В этот час ты призналась, что нет любви. I once asked my great-grandmother to scratch a spot on my hand where a mosquito had bitten me. It was the kind of affection I was brave enough to ask for as a child, since it was attached to a more direct need. In an effort to teach me that an itch is only prolonged by scratching, my great-grandmother leaned over and spit on my hand. Utterly confused, I mumbled, "Спасибо, бабушка." Thank you.
Wow. If anyone ever had a kind of a question of how hot Ksenia is, the singing made it even hotter. So thank you for lighting our hearts up with fire. Yeah, we need more of that. Pride Month's coming up, so every day, every day. Thank you so much, my friend. That was really beautiful. I want to introduce our next reader, Wendy Vogel. Wendy and I met in 2019. We both did a residency in Vermont at Marble House. And as I always am, I was flustered trying to navigate packing to get there, not sure who I was going to meet. I usually don't know anyone who's there until I actually get there. And then when we all arrived, we were having a dinner outside, and I'm kind of shy, so I usually sit in the corner. Wendy comes up to me and go, "Hey, I remember this performance you did at Microscope this past summer." I'm like, how does this person know me? But that's the thing about Wendy. Wendy knows every single artist. And that is the beauty of who Wendy is, obviously, with the work that she does, but also in the ways, thinking about, again, this beautiful ways of engagement that they both bring to the lives of so many. One of the reasons I think why so many people are just in love and in awe with the way that Wendy writes, not just about the artist, but the work too. because there's a deep passion and engagement with, again, not just the practice, but the person in general. I was really grateful that summer, for that 1 month, to get to know Wendy. Again, not wanting to talk about anything in regards to what these two do, but we all know Wendy is an amazing writer and critic in the art world, but also just an amazing human, an amazing person, just talking, laughing, sharing, just like really incredible stories with one another, having nights where we had to do a pizza on the stick, which I will never forget. I think that's going to be a life story between us. But yeah, it's just the beauty of that. So I'm just really grateful to be able to say Wendy Vogel is my friend. I'm just grateful to have you in my life. Wendy is going to be doing a reading that I actually got the chance to experience in 2019. And I remember I was sitting in the back of the space where she was reading, and my mouth had dropped because I was in awe by the way that you spoke so clearly, and also the way that you were able to kind of really push this vulnerable subject matter into a space and allow people to kind of feel it with you. So I thank you for your presence, for your words, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to give us today.
Hi, everyone. Let me just test this. Ooh, I don't think the projector's on, is it? So we'll just wait for a second. Lei, thank you for that amazing introduction. And Ksenia, thank you so much for your work. I know your work as a critic, and I didn't know this other body of work that you did, and it was really moving. So thank you for sharing this evening with me. Okay, great. It looks like the projector has turned on. All right, so let me just move to make sure all my tech is here. So this is a piece about trying to find lost parts of myself. And this presentation is a bit of an experiment, so fingers crossed for no technical difficulties. Trisha had come back from a ballet company in the South, and she was languishing beneath a polished surface. She sat on the floor with us in her pink tights, her pale skin sunken, her red hair tightly pulled back, her legs impossibly long, filling the space between us. She told us proudly that she danced as the Arabian queen in the Nutcracker, but she was never thin enough. She told us her secrets to shrinking her svelte body even more, a diet of nothing but coffee and water, wearing layers of trash bag pants during her warm-up stretches, and the heater she blasted all night in her bedroom before weigh-ins. We watched a video of her performance in which every alabaster rib was articulated above her silver harem pants. She was hoisted over the male dancers' heads like a sacrifice. Trisha started poking at our extra weight, and I retreated into myself. One frigid Saturday morning, I fell face first doing pas de chas across the floor in my baggy sweatpants, which I refused to remove, citing the cold as an excuse. My braces scraped my mouth, tearing a hole. I said nothing when confronted with the stony faces of the other girls, seeming to dare me to cry. Even today, I feel a bump of scar tissue when I run my tongue along the inside of my lip. Our breath of fresh air came from our newest teacher, Kai. Her laugh was as wild and free as her curly hair, as unruly as her breasts swinging visibly underneath her leotard. Although she was still in college, she was the mother of a toddler, and this distinct passage into womanhood gave her an authority that counterbalanced her otherwise hippie-ish disposition. At the very end of class, Kai invited us onto the floor to try out our fouette turns. We turned for exactly 4 minutes and 20 seconds, during which she played the spin doctors, some gentle humor. We giggled as we wobbled, bumped into each other, sometimes wiping out entirely onto the floor. Kai gave us all a moment to collect ourselves before Reverence, and then she switched tracks to Enya's Caribbean Blue. At home, I was listening full blast to Rage Against the Machine, dubbed on cassette for me by my best friend, Dina. When I went to the mall, I cruised the discount CD and tape bins for indie, punk, goth, or anything from the amorphous category of college rock. Still, I found something beautiful in Enya's lilting melody. On one level, it was pure relief. The song signaled the end of the excruciating class. We would bow deeply to our own images in the mirror and then peel off our point shoes from our blistered feet. On another level, Enya's corny track was suffused with fantasy. This weird elfish tune transported me far away from New Jersey into a world of a musician's own making. That year, our dance company performed as entertainment at the Miss New Jersey Collegiate pageant held at a community college. In the green room, which was a small classroom, we got ready next to the contestants. We were slack-jawed as they primped for their swimsuited catwalk across the stage, these women not much older than us. But the years of adolescence seemed like an ocean we would never cross. The contestants sprayed glue onto their asses so that their swimsuits would stick. They propped up their breasts with stickers. They teased their hair for volume and locked it in with hairspray, willing it toward the ceiling. They offered themselves up for consumption as ritual, as a mirage, as a series of parts defying gravity. The image burned into my mind as all shimmer, shiny teal and shiny legs. In between rounds of the pageant competition, I clambered into a red, white, and blue jumpsuit to perform at the dance company to hooray for our favorite son from Will Rogers' Follies. The number was one of our company standards, and although I despise being at a pageant altogether, I was even more nervous because the more seasoned dancers knew it better than me. My leotard had been worn before by how many bodies I didn't know. It smelled faintly of period blood and sagged under the arms. Similar to A Chorus Line, Will Rogers' Follies is a postmodern Broadway musical. While A Chorus Line revels in backstage rivalries and dramas of a theatrical production, The Follies indulges and romanticizes the confectionery nature of classic Hollywood and vaudeville. We sang along over the track. Our choreography was ripped straight from a video of the musical, a synchronized Busby Berkeley-esque routine of syncopated leg and arm movements. Our bodies were also broken down into parts. Our arms patting each other's thighs, our legs kicking above our heads. The rest of the night, we young girls sat in the dark theater watching the spectacle of the pageant. On the drive home with my mother, I cruised the dial to the modern rock station, blasting the Butthole Surfers and Weezer. I was searching for alignment with musicians, not with those girls. Kai also taught modern dance, the only class where I showed any genuine enthusiasm. I loved the shapes we made, so counterintuitive to the controlled carriage of ballet. We always began class with a starfish warm-up on the floor, slowly peeling our limbs off the wooden planks, feeling our way through connection and disconnection with the ground. Kai choreographed our recital routine to Paco Bell's Canon, and in the opening bars, we walked like we were moving through water. Our arms were arranged at hard angles, our poses like ancient statuary. One night, Kai grew frustrated with the class. They were slipping back into the rules of ballet. She made everyone stop and watch me perform what she called modern runs. Alone, I beat circles into the floor, moving fast, my arms close to my sides and my hips low. I ran, not caring about how much noise my feet made as they struck the ground. I ran, oblivious to how wide my path was. I ran, and I was possessed by power undercut by quiet rage. I imagined I could fly away. I imagined I could become someone else. Later that year, a small group of us attended Kai's university dance concert. There, I saw works of performance art for the first time. In one piece, a man slowly emerged from a box. Through the haze of memory, I swear he reached his hand down his briefs and burst a blood packet. I'd never seen work that evoked something political, whether it was AIDS or homelessness or sexual paranoia, I really didn't know, through such an economy of means. Outside of MTV, I'd never seen art that so clearly disturbed its viewers. A few years later, for my 15th birthday, Dina made me a mixtape that has Bikini Kill's Thurston Hart's The Who on it. It was my introduction to Riot Girl and another flashpoint on my journey toward professional devotion to feminist art. In the track, Bratmobile musician Molly Neumann reads a negative review of one of Bikini Kill's shows. She can barely be heard over the sing-song chorus. If Sonic Youth thinks you're cool, does that mean everything to you? Thurston Hart's The Who, how about you? I rewound the tape over and over so that I could understand fragments of the review against the wall of noise.
So we're gonna play a new song for you, and we don't know how it goes, but it might work. Do you remember how it goes, Kathy? Okay.
Bikini Kill, you really had to be there. I got the opportunity to meet them, this DC-based punk foursome, before the show. I was shocked at how contradictory their words and actions were. The supposed message of Bikini Kill's music and literature is girl love and feminism, yet what comes across on stage is man hate, a fanatic rebellion against the world and themselves. As the background noise rose, I listened hard to parse it out, deciphering the following. Quote, the crowd, out of control. Interestingly, exclusively men. Feedback is the band's favorite noise. Punk rock has got some of those elements, but not so extreme. Bikini Kill are activists, not musicians, end quote. This difficult song quickly became one of my favorites, and not just because everyone I played it for hated it. Through it, I learned something important about irony. You could turn something that was hated about you to your own advantage. You could turn being bratty into making a political statement, to indict a system that would dismiss you for being anything but the patriarchal status quo. The next year, when I was a sophomore in high school, I took a drama class to fill a gap in my schedule. I was deflated when I found out that the class would be taught by a middle-aged English teacher who doubled as the school's wrestling coach. He wore schlumpy pleated front khakis, aviator glasses, and a flat top cop cut. He admitted he knew nothing about theater, which at that point was my true passion. At the end of the semester, our teacher announced that our final assignment would be a beauty pageant. While everyone else in the class performed in the faux pageant as themselves, I decided I needed some intellectual armor. Based on my knowledge of feminism, I devised a character in homage to the militancy of 70s second wavers, Ms. Liberated Woman. I wore a red ribbon sash that my mother took me to buy at the fabric store, on which I wrote Ms. Lib in thick black Sharpie. I asked her if I could also buy fake hair to attach to my armpits. She was horrified, but playing with gender for the sake of art wasn't without precedent. In elementary school, I had a role in a small school play as the King of Books. Together, my mom and I devised a campy costume from repurposed scraps from the thrift store. I wore a long red robe made from a cut-up dress and old ballet slippers, which we spray painted silver and covered with fake colorful gemstones. The pièce de résistance was a long gray beard that swung to my belly button. Performing as Ms. Liberated Woman, I wore my Rosie the Riveter t-shirt and a bandana. I wanted to borrow a friend's bell-bottom jeans, but when I couldn't squeeze into them, I just went with my regular olive cargo pants. In retrospect, I realized it wasn't much different from how I normally dressed. For the formal wear portion, I stomped down the runway in my Doc Martens as someone recited a text I wrote, which included my name, my weight as none of your damn business. For the talent portion, I sang a beginner's opera aria. A friend played live accompaniment on piano, but she tried to play it like Tori Amos, speeding up and slowing down at odd emotive intervals. Her timing totally confused me. I stormed off the stage at the end of my song rather than taking my bow. To my delight, when the pageant winners were announced, I came in second runner-up. I grabbed the microphone and rattled off an impromptu speech about the fascism of beauty standards. Afterwards, the drama teacher shuffled up to apologize to me, explaining that the winner was determined at random. He even showed me that he drew names out of a hat, but I was beaming. Couldn't he understand that losing was the perfect outcome for my character? Didn't he know about the Miss America 1968 feminist protests? But neither the teacher nor my fellow students understood the irony. Furthermore, no one understood the history from which I took inspiration for the Ms. Lib character. No one understood that a gap existed between her and me. All they saw was my anger. As an art critic, I've always been interested in feminist artists with alter egos, especially those who perform for unsuspecting audiences. I've often thought of the practices of Lynn Hirschman Leeson, Lorraine O'Grady, Adrienne Piper, Andrea Fraser. These artists have deftly exposed the norms of class, race, and gender in both art institutions and public space. Their personae are often effective because they hew so closely to their real selves, slipping fact and fiction off like a cloak. In 2014, a feminist art space asked me to propose a topic for an evening of readings and performances. I said that I would write a piece about my high school performance as Ms. Liberated Woman. My search for the documentation of the event became material that has since had a life of its own.
One, if you know your party's 4-digit extension. Press 2 to report an absence. Press 3 for the attendance or discipline office. Press 4 for the guidance department. Press 5 for the main office. Press main office, may I help you?
Hi, I'm calling with a kind of unusual question. I'm an alumni of the high school, and I'm looking to see if there's documentation of an event that I participated in as part of Mr. DiBiase's drama class in, I believe, the fall of 1998. How might I go about tracking that down? Do you know? Should I contact the AV department, or specifically I'm looking for
if
a
there would be anything as far as yearbook coverage, maybe Mrs. Jasper would know.
Uh-huh. Do you
Um,
think there might be, because I feel like I remember there being like a video of it, but I'm not sure, because obviously it's been 16 years
Hold on
since
one
then.
second, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm the only one here. Right
Yeah,
now.
no, that's okay.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've only been here a couple years, so let me put you through to Mrs. Jasper, and then maybe she can direct you from there. If
Yeah.
there's not yearbook coverage, maybe she would know the video or something.
Okay, great.
Hopefully she can help you out with that.
Thank you.
Okay?
All
You're
right.
welcome. Hello?
Hi, Mrs. Jasper.
Yeah.
Hi, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Wendy Vogel. I graduated from West Deptford High School in 2001.
Yes, I do.
I'm calling with kind of an unusual request. I'm a professional art critic now and a writer and an editor, and I'm working on an essay about a performance sort of thing that I participated in when I was in Mr. DiBiase's drama class in, I believe, the fall of 1998. You know, I'm interested in feminist performance, and I'm sort of investigating my own history and thinking about this final pageant that he had for the drama class as an early example of my own participation in performance art. So my question is, I believe that like this final for our drama class was videoed and probably photographed, and I'm wondering how I can find a record of that, if it exists. The main office suggested that maybe it might be in the yearbook archive.
Nothing with us.
No. Do you think I could contact Mr. Kirshner and
Did he
video check?
video your book at that point?
Not video yearbook, but I feel like I remember there being a tape, like a videotape, but it could have been like, I don't know if somebody personally had a camcorder. Yeah, and he's not working.
That did it.
He's not working at the high school anymore.
No, he's gone. He's left years ago.
Did he retire?
No, he was let go.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you don't think it might be worth trying to contact Mr. Kirshner, or do you think there's any forwarding information for Mr.
I don't know
DiBiase?
if he's in the archives. I know that the high school is not real good at that.
Yeah,
I've been trying to gather as much information as I can about the school. They don't always save everything. So, I mean, you can contact him personally.
to contact Mr. DiBiase.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how I could do that. Maybe I can contact the main office and see if they have any.
Well, he lives in Woodstown,
Oh, okay.
and I'm sure he's in the book, you know.
I'm interested in sort of like trying to reconstruct what that was, because I'm trying to go back and claim it as a piece of performance art that I participated in before I even knew what performance art was. So I'm trying to track down whether there's any footage, either video or photography from that event. And
Okay, well, he's no longer here.
yeah, I heard that. Can you say why he left, or do
Sorry,
you
did you mention, yeah,
on?
but it was pivotal, in your development.
For
So
sure, yeah, yeah,
That was the missing piece, so. Now, did
exactly.
he keep the project? Did he keep it? As far as, finding that, I mean, and then again, he would be, but I mean, being a man, like I have, boy, is that a feminist? No, that's a whole different thing, but I mean, I have records of everything. I have pictures of every poster that anybody ever did. If
Yeah.
not the exact poster, you know what I mean? I just categorize things and catalog them and what have you, but that's gonna be tough. Unless you can remember and recreate it. How about
Awesome.
DiBiase himself? Did you try to find him?
I haven't tried to find him. I think I might have found him on LinkedIn. Maybe I can send him a message or something,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
just find him. I mean, I don't think he's on Facebook, but
Yeah.
sometimes the lack of something inspires something else. So who
Right.
knows? Maybe I'll need to change.
Spoken as a true artist.
No, it's true, you know, that with constraints, that's where creativity comes, that issues forth.
Absolutely, absolutely. Or a need to fill a void, a need for something.
Mhm.
Inventions are created because, there's a dearth somewhere, so.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna
Okay.
run, sweetheart.
Okay.
Okay.
Gros bisous.
Take care.
Ciao.
Good luck.
Bye.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
You.
Wow. Oh man, thank you both so much for tonight. Thank you everyone who's here. Dave and I have been working on this series since April 1st. I mean, even before then for planning, but the series has been going on since April 1st. Tonight was beautiful because yeah, you two are amazing. So I'm really, really grateful for the space you created and adding so much to our lives. Our next series and our final is next weekend. If you're in town, please stop by. We'll have Fred Moten and Onyx Collective. So it'll be an exciting end, but also a beginning. So thank you all for being here today.
Well, the AB works so well, yeah. And yeah, it was really